the day human cadet Jace Ryland arrived at the Xeno-Weaponry Academy. Nothing felt normal, not for him, and certainly not for the aliens who watched him step off the docking platform, Centauri Prime, a massive orbital station spinning high above. The gas giant, Velthor 7, is home to the most advanced combat training institution in the galaxy. Reserved for species with generations of battle legacy and deep space warfare history, Jace, by contrast, came from a planet that had only recently joined the Galactic Union, a small blue world called Earth. Known more for its unpredictable weather and strange food than for its military strength, as he walked through the shining metal corridors, dragging a single duffel bag and glancing at towering alien architecture, he felt more like a tourist than a warrior. Around him, alien cadets stood silently, observing the newcomer. The reptilian Krothak muttered something in their native tongue, their golden eyes narrowing. A group of crystal-bodied Valari whispered telepathically, their faces unreadable. To them, humans were weak, untested, barely out of their gravity wells. They didn't understand why the Academy's board had allowed a human to join. Was it political? Was it a joke? Either way, they doubted he would survive the first cycle of training. Jace wasn't tall by galactic standards. He didn't have scales or wings or claws. He wore a standard gray cadet uniform that fit a little too loosely, and his face looked calm. Maybe too calm for someone entering a place where failure often meant injury or worse, despite the quiet judgment. Jace didn't react. He walked with steady steps, nodded politely to every alien he passed, and kept his head held high. It wasn't confidence. It was control. Back on Earth, he had trained in dozens of martial arts disciplines, not because someone told him to, but because he loved the discipline and the mystery of mastering his body and mind. Here, surrounded by beings who could crush boulders or hurl gravity fields, he knew he wouldn't impress anyone by looking strong. But he didn't come to impress. He came to learn. When he entered the main hall for orientation, a massive dome, lined with floating holoscreens and translator drones, the alien students gathered around for their first briefing. Master Varix, a tall insectoid with glittering black eyes and sharp mandibles, took the stage with smooth authority. Beside him stood Commander Tilvern, whose crystalline form glowed faintly with shifting colors. Their voices echoed across the room as they welcomed the cadets and introduced the Academy's harsh and often dangerous training schedule. Jace listened carefully, ignoring the sideways glances and smirks thrown his way. He was used to being underestimated, was something of a tradition for humans. Later, during a casual meet and greet between species, a curious but skeptical avian student named Trillic approached Jace. The tall, feathered creature tilted his head, eyes blinking rapidly, and asked, "Human, what form of combat training does your kind practice? How do you prepare for galactic warfare?" Several others leaned in, clearly interested in hearing what this strange earthling would say. Jace paused, thinking carefully, then gave a small smile and answered, "We call it PE." The aliens blinked, confused. PE, someone echoed. "Physical education," Jace clarified. "Kids back home start learning how to fight, run, dodge, and work as a team when they're very young. It's part of school." His voice was calm, but his words sent a ripple of quiet across the room. Most of these species, combat was a rite of passage, often earned through years of struggle or tradition. The idea that human children practiced it casually in school was unsettling. Some chuckled awkwardly, thinking he was joking. Others didn't. Jace didn't laugh. He didn't look smug either. He simply stood there, quiet and observant, as if watching how his answer landed in the room was more important than the answer itself. The next day, students were separated into teams and introduced to their dorms and instructors. Placed in Squad Varnock, along with cadets from 5 different species. They didn't speak much to him at first. Some were polite, others ignored him entirely. But Jace didn't take offense. He watched, he listened. He paid attention to the training rooms, the weapons lockers, the simulator doors, and even the emergency escape routes. It's not because he didn't trust the Academy, but because old habits died hard. His Earth-based instructors had always taught, Him that awareness was survival, especially when you didn't look like the biggest threat in the room. Instructors monitored the students closely. Master Vorix made frequent notes on his holopad whenever Jace was nearby, and Commander Tilvern observed from afar, curious about how the human cadet would adjust. What they saw confused them. Jace didn't stand out, didn't cause trouble, didn't show off. He simply completed every task with silent precision, often faster than expected. But when asked to demonstrate Earth's combat philosophy in a briefing later that week, Jace simply replied, "I'd rather show you when the time comes." No bravado, no boast. Just quiet certainty. That sentence stayed with them longer than it should have. The announcement of Combat Demonstration Week stirred excitement across the Xenoweaponry Academy, echoing through the metal corridors and rippling into every training bay and dorm hall. It was the week every cadet prepared for, since arrival the moment to showcase their species' martial mastery. It's not just to the instructors, but to their peers and commanders. Flags of 100 civilizations were projected above the central arena, each swirling with its own symbols of honor and power. The air buzzed with anticipation as the first group, the Drillari, stepped onto the platform. Their bodies glowed faintly, and without touching a single object, they bent steel beams. With the sheer force of their minds, the crowd seated in floating observation rings roared in awe as steel spiraled into knots and hovered in midair like paper. Next came the Zalvek, reptilian warriors with claws like razors and movements like lightning. Two of them sparred in, a blur of limbs, their sharp strikes slicing through holographic obstacles. Sparks flew as their claws met, and the sound of high-speed impact echoed off the dome. Applause filled the chamber. Each demonstration that followed gravity manipulation by the Vialorn, sonic disruption by the Ekoyan twins, and even the flame-dancing duel of the Pyrrhonites drew gasps, cheers, and nods of admiration. Then came the final slot. A single name appeared on the holodisplay. Cadet Jace, Ryland, Planet Earth. There was a brief pause in the crowd, then a ripple of laughter from a few sections. Some students leaned forward in curiosity. Others looked confused. "Is that the human?" someone whispered. "What can a human possibly do?" muttered a tall Krothak warrior, arms folded. As Jace walked to the center of the platform in simple Earth's military fatigues, with no visible armor or weapons, even a few instructors raised their brows. The stage adjusted for his height, shrinking from the towering scale of the Zalvek match. To a more modest size, Jace said nothing, simply stood in the middle, eyes closed for a moment, taking a breath. The mechanical assistant activated a standard training drone, then two more. Each hovered in a triangle around him, scanning his vitals, preparing for non-lethal sparring. No one expected much. A few students even turned away, assuming it would be over quickly. But the moment the signal tone Echo Days moved, his footwork was instant, smooth, and controlled. He slid into a basic Krav Maga stance, then shifted seamlessly into a defensive posture. As the first drone darted toward him with a shock baton, Jace sidestepped and struck its joint with a palm, flipping it off balance. In a blink, he spun into a judo throw, grabbing its weight and slamming it to the ground with shocking efficiency. Gasps echoed. The second drone fired a low stun beam, but Jace dropped to a crouch, rolled beneath it, and rose with a powerful Muay Thai elbow that knocked the drone's stabilizer offline. As the third drone rushed him from behind, he turned just in time to disarm it, mid-twisting the baton out of its grip and using its own momentum to redirect it. He flung the disabled drone into the other two. Sparks flew. The platform lights flickered. The whole fight lasted less than 20 seconds. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the background hum of the arena seemed to fade. Jace took a calm breath, his chest rising and falling with no sign of strain. His stance loosened, his arms relaxed, and he gave a small shrug. "That was just warm-up," he said casually, his voice clear over the translator system. A Zarnian cadet in the upper ring leaned forward, wide-eyed. "What ... was that?" he whispered, not even realizing he said it aloud. Instructor Varix, who had been watching from the command podium, stared down at the platform with unblinking black eyes. His mandibles shifted slightly, a rare sign of surprise. Commander Tilvern tilted her crystalline head, refracting the lights in puzzled patterns. She activated a holofeed replay, slowing down Jace's movements frame by frame. No cybernetic implants, she noted quietly. No enhancers, only muscle memory and reflex. Students who had mocked earlier now whispered to one another, unsure how to process what they had seen. It wasn't just speed. It wasn't just power. It was control. There was no wasted movement, no hesitation. Jace hadn't fought like someone with strength beyond understanding. He had fought like someone who understood his limits and mastered them completely. Mechanical assistant buzzed back to life and requested a second round for scoring. Jace politely declined. "I think that's enough for today," he said, stepping down from the platform, leaving behind the flickering remains of the drones in a room that no longer saw him as the weak one. He returned to his seat without fanfare. Some cadets shifted to give him space. Others just stared. The laughter was gone, now replaced by the weight of questions no one had dared ask before. How many forms of combat did humans study? How much training did they undergo back on Earth? What else had Jace not revealed yet? Even the instructors exchanged glances. Master Varek scribbled something new into his datapad, and Commander Tilvern whispered perhaps the board was right to invite him. As the demonstration ended and the cadets were dismissed, no one forgot what they had seen. They didn't speak of it loudly, but the silence carried more weight than words ever could. And somewhere, deep in the minds of the Academy's most elite warriors, thought began to grow. If this was a human's warm dash-up, ... what happens when they're actually fighting? The day after Jace Ryland's combat demonstration, the mood inside the Xenoweaponry Academy shifted in a strange, almost invisible way. The corridors no longer echoed with chatter when he passed. Study groups dissolved the moment he approached. Even the more curious cadets who had once observed him with amusement now avoided eye contact, stepping aside with stiff shoulders and glancing nervously at their datapads. Rumors in the academy spread faster than plasma in a broken containment field, and Jace's calm dismantling of the training drones became something far greater than a simple exercise. Some claimed he had hidden weapon implants, surgically embedded, in his limbs. Others were convinced his martial display was a message from Earth, a silent threat sent to remind the galaxy humans were not as weak or primitive as they seemed. The story morphed and grew with each retelling. A few said he moved faster than sound. Others insisted the drones had been secretly modified to self-destruct and he merely triggered them. No matter the version, one thing became clear. Fear had taken root, yet Jace, unaware of the tension building around him, continued his routine as normal. He greeted others with a smile, offered help in class discussions, and even brought snacks from Earth to share. But each time, his efforts were met with nervous glances or polite excuses. He couldn't understand what he had done wrong. Back home, his demonstration would have barely earned a passing grade in advanced self-defense. At Earth's academies, weekend classes for teenagers taught those moves. He had simply followed protocol, showed restraint, and stuck to the basics. One afternoon, Jace received a summons to Instructor Varex's office. The insectoid commander stood tall behind his metallic desk, mandibles twitching slightly, his compound eyes studying the human with unreadable focus. The room was quiet, but the atmosphere felt heavy. Cadet Ryland Varex began, his voice clicking through the translator. "Your recent demonstration has caused ... disturbance." Jace blinked, unsure what he meant. "Disturbance?" asked. Varex tilted his head. "Several cadets have expressed concern over your combat capabilities. One even suggested that your ... display was an indirect declaration of Earth's military power." Jace's eyes widened. "Wait, what? That wasn't... No, sir? That was just basic stuff. I didn't even use my full speed." Varex's mandibles twitched again. "Basic," he echoed. "You said ... basic." Yes, Jace nodded, trying not to laugh at how serious the instructor looked. "Back home, we teach kids that stuff. In weekend classes, honestly, Earth's got way scarier systems. That was nothing." The silence that followed was sharp. Varek slowly tapped his data console, recording the answer, but his body language betrayed a ripple of unease. "I see," he said, though clearly he didn't. He dismissed Jace with a nod. But as the human walked out, Varek stared after him for a long time, already drafting a report for the Academy Council. That night, word of Jace's casual statement spread like wildfire. His simple truth that Earth children learn such skills casually was misinterpreted as something terrifying. "If their youth are trained like that," whispered a Pyronite cadet, "what must their soldiers be like?" A group of Krothok warriors requested emergency transfer to another academy, citing psychological incompatibility with a human presence. A telepathic Drolari composed a letter to her homeworld's defense ministry, urging them to reassess their stance on Earth's peaceful classification. Even the instructors began holding closed-door meetings. Tilvern, crystalline, and composed, reviewed ancient Earth footage that had been uploaded during humanity's application to the Galactic Council, watched grainy clips of martial tournaments, military drills, and even fictional action movies, and what she saw only deepened her confusion. Was it fiction, or was it training? Were humans simply always this prepared for violence, or had they evolved in a world so dangerous that combat was second nature? Meanwhile, Jace sat alone in the dining bay, eating quietly, still clueless too. The storm he had stirred. He thought maybe he had bad breath, or maybe the food he brought from Earth smelled strange to alien senses. He didn't realize that his honest words had sent shockwaves through cultures that viewed open strength as aggression. The alien races at the Academy came from societies where physical prowess was often ceremonial or symbolic. Many fought with mental energy, tech-assisted weapons, or gravity-based systems, but hand-to-hand combat done with such fluid brutality. That was ancient. That was primal. Want for a cadet to do it with such ease and then call it basic was not just surprising, it was unsettling. The misunderstandings piled up quickly. One cadet claimed Jace had been trained in something called Muay Thai, which through faulty translation was mistaken for mind torture hybrid. Another insisted Krav Maga was a secret code for kinetic rapid assault variant, military assault grade. Jace's name soon appeared in several unofficial reports filed by anxious students, warning that humans may possess hidden military branches, not disclosed during their induction to the Galactic Union. The fear wasn't born from hatred, it was uncertainty. No one knew what Jace might do next, or what Earth was truly capable of. Even the bravest began to treat him with caution. By the time the next training rotation began, Jace noticed the distance between him and others had grown wider. What he thought was just a display of discipline had been seen as a veiled warning. And as the stars spun outside the Academy's transparent dome, somewhere far away, a government official read a message that simply said, "Humans may not be what they appear. Recommend reevaluation. Urgently." Schedule was suddenly interrupted by blaring alarms and flashing red lights that filled the air with tension and confusion. At first, many students believed it was another simulation, another drill meant to test their reflexes or coordination. But the fear in the instructors' voices over the intercom told a different story. Pirate raiders, known throughout the quadrant for their brutality, had somehow bypassed the Academy's advanced security systems and breached the station. Within minutes, they had taken several cadets hostage from the upper-level training hall and sealed off critical corridors. Panic began to ripple through the facility as cadets scrambled for orders, and no one knew how to respond. While the command staff debated strategy, Jace stood silently in the background, watching the screen as blips marked the movement of hostiles. Without waiting to be chosen, he stepped forward and offered to lead the rescue. The room fell quiet. "You?" asked a Zalvet cadet, still unsure whether Jace was more hero or threat. "You don't even have a plasma blade." But Jace remained calm, replying with a steady voice, "I won't need one." He refused armor, declined advanced gear, and carried only a small toolkit slung across his back. It wasn't bravery. Exactly, it was something else. A quiet certainty. Reluctantly, a group of mixed-species cadets agreed to follow, though some whispered that this might be the last mission they'd ever take. The academy's corridors, once filled with the hum of training, now echoed with distant gunfire and the occasional sharp cry. Jace moved through them not like a soldier, but like someone who had memorized the station's layout better than its own architects. It took routes no one else considered: maintenance, shafts, ventilation ducts, old training arenas no longer in use. He made weapons out of metal rods, disarmed energy traps using the magnetic core of a cleaning bot, and at one point even rigged a pressure system to explode with carefully placed kitchen chemicals. The cadets following him were stunned by how quickly he adapted. He gave clear instructions, kept calm under pressure, and never hesitated. When they reached the first group of pirates guarding a storage wing, Jace didn't wait for negotiation. He leaped from above, using only a snapped-off panel cover as a shield, and knocked one unconscious before the others could react. His movements were fast, but controlled. Every step, every punch, every shift in weight was deliberate. The alien cadets watched in awe, barely able to keep up as Jace turned broken, mop handles into traps and disabled wrist blasters by overloading their power cells. When they finally reached the hostage room, they found it guarded by a heavily armed drone and AI sentry that moved faster than most creatures could think. The cadets froze, unsure how to approach it. But Jace did something no one expected. He taunted it. He dodged its shots not with tech, but with timing, weaving unpredictably, using reflections and his own voice to confuse its sensors. At one point, he ducked behind a fallen chair, tossed a mirror shard to distract the AI's laser, then launched himself forward and disabled its core with a rusted screwdriver. It wasn't textbook. It was chaos turned into strategy. Somehow it worked. When the last door opened and the hostages were freed, none of them had a scratch. Jace had taken a few hits, his shoulder bruised, a cut across his cheek, but he barely seemed to notice. He simply smiled and helped a smaller cadet to their feet, asking if they were okay. The others looked at him not with suspicion anymore, but with awe. By the time they returned to the Central Command, the story had already begun to spread. He fought 5 pirates with a chair leg, someone whispered. He outsmarted an AI combat drone, said another. He didn't even break a sweat, a third claimed, though Jace was definitely sweating. His videos, captured from the stations. Surveillance feeds began to circulate, and cadets gathered in common halls just to watch the footage again and again. One moment showed Jace diving from a balcony 3 floors high, rolling on impact, and taking down 2 pirates before they could raise their weapons. Another clip showed him shielding a younger student using nothing but a flipped table and raw instinct. To the alien cadets, it looked impossible. To Jace, it was routine. When questioned by the Academy News Relay, he simply shrugged and said, "That was just a Tuesday back home." The instructors were speechless. Even Master Varix, who had once viewed Jace's potential with caution, now watched him with a kind of wary respect. Reports were filed to the Galactic Council about the incident, and once again, questions about Earth's true nature rose to the surface. Was this young human just gifted, or was he a product of an entire world trained for survival in ways the galaxy didn't yet understand? Either way, things had changed. No one avoided Jace now. They watched him, studied him, tried to understand him. Some cadets asked to train under him. Others just wanted to talk. He never acted like a hero, never bragged or demanded attention. He just smiled, trained hard, and moved on to the next challenge. But in the minds of those who saw what he did that day, one thought remained. If that was just a Tuesday, what would happen if Earth ever faced a real war? After the unforgettable raid rescue, everything at the Interstellar Academy changed, not just for Jace, but for the entire student body. Where once there had been suspicion and distance, there was now curiosity and deep respect. Jace didn't boast or act superior. In fact, he kept a low profile, still attending his classes, still training hard, still helping others without hesitation. But students watched him with different eyes, now not as a curiosity from Earth, but as a warrior they could learn from. What had once seemed like an accident or a one-time act of luck was now recognized as something greater. Instructors began observing Jace more closely, taking notes. and eventually asking him to demonstrate his methods in combat classes. At first, he was reluctant, but when he realized they truly wanted to understand not just him, but what made Earth's style so different, he agreed. His demonstrations were simple, using ordinary tools in everyday situations to create defensive strategies that were unpredictable and effective. A broken chair became a shield. A pen was used as a lockpick. Timing and instinct were emphasized. More than fancy tech or expensive armor. Before long, whispers began turning into requests. Requests turned into a full course. Earth combat tactics, survival, and improvisation. It was offered as an elective, and within hours of opening, every slot was filled. Students from every species, some even with their own long histories of war, now wanted to learn the strange and unpredictable techniques of a human who claimed he wasn't special. News of this new course and the incident that inspired it traveled far beyond the station. Reports were sent to distant homeworlds, marked with red priority status, and discussed in secret government chambers. Some viewed the footage of Jace with disbelief, others with quiet alarm. He had used no high-tech weapons, no advanced armor, and yet achieved results many trained units couldn't. One memo from the Zalari intelligence office simply read, "Under no circumstances should humans be considered a low-risk species. Their casual strength is equal to advanced level training in most systems. Proceed with extreme caution in all future encounters." Another report from a diplomatic advisor added, "Do not provoke humans. Ever. Their basic is everyone else's advanced." It became a saying across multiple planets, repeated by generals and civilians alike, simple and impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Jace carried on as usual, though he noticed the changes. More cadets waved when passing him in the halls. Instructors asked for his thoughts during debriefs. Alien students who once avoided him now invited him to join their study groups, eager to understand what shaped someone like him. During one training session, Master Varix, who had once doubted Jace's place in the academy, stood silently at the edge of the field, watching Jace guide a group of cadets through a simulation using only environmental objects and teamwork. After it ended, Varix stepped forward and gave a respectful nod. No words were needed. The message was clear. Still, through all the attention and change, Jace never let it go to his head. He remained the same quiet, observant student who laughed during meals and helped classmates with their assignments. When asked in an interview how he felt about becoming the Academy's most talked-about figure, simply grinned and said, "I guess humanity's just good at being underestimated." The answer wasn't arrogant, it was honest. Earth wasn't the most powerful planet, nor the most advanced, but its people had grown up in a world that forced them to be creative, quick, and resilient. Jace never claimed to be the best. He knew there were others back home who could do far more. That idea, more than anything else, shook the galaxy. If Jace was only average by human standards, what would happen if someone truly elite arrived? That quiet thought echoed across command centers and war rooms, reshaping how interplanetary powers thought about Earth. Trade agreements were revisited. Peace talks were extended. Recruitment strategies were changed. The galaxy had seen the curve, and they now knew humans didn't rise to the challenge. They were born in it. And just like that, Earth, once ignored or dismissed, became a world no one could afford to overlook again.